Fascinating perspective again on consensus reality. I love what you said. I think your reticular activating system plays a big role into how you see this place. Again, eyewitness testimonies in court cases are the most unreliable for this reason, that they can't trust two people to observe something accurately enough
Yes.
to make a conviction. And so it is interesting when we start to consider the observer effect. And spoke to a dear friend of mine recently, Stephanie Patel, about the idea of sort of the Thomas Young philosophy of the observer effect. But what was interesting about it is applying mathematics to anything. And her argument is, or one of her perceptions is that it's actually not constant. Math isn't constant, because what the mathematician does is put himself in the equation. And what happens with a steady, stagnant, stable, sort of cold universe that's not as kinetic as it could be, is how it's phrased, then there is actually an inability to put yourself into the equation. So with that, that's what happens with this cold, rigid system of math, is you pull yourself out of that as the observer. Now, it's interesting that our reality then is that we then put ourselves in that and then test that against the math and theories and see where we fit into the game. But it's fascinating, the observer. And then this again is why consensus reality, or that we're all in the same place, sort of goes out the window at that point.
Yes, well, by the way, that sounds a little bit like a misinterpretation of quantum theory, but the basic idea that like each of us sees a different world, and the miracle is that we can coordinate and cooperate as if we all saw the same world. That's the miracle. But it's not the case that the observer, by creating knowledge about reality, creates reality. That isn't true. The reality we each have. I have said that it would be better if we referred to scientific theories as misconceptions from the outset, not only after we have found that the theory is false. So, you know, I would say Newton's misconception of gravity was overturned by Einstein's misconception of gravity, which hasn't been overturned yet, but and which is definitely better than Newton's, as far as we can tell. Um, but none of those ideas are the actual reality. But our misconceptions don't create reality. And it's funny you should mention mathematics, because the same holds for mathematics. There is an objective truth in mathematics, but we can never know it for sure. We can just guess it, just like we guess physical reality. And there's a very nice book by I've now forgotten the name of the book, but um, the author is Greg Egan, who is one of my favorite science fiction authors, and he wrote a book in which very large numbers are not definite. They only become definite when we do maths that invokes them. And so there are these people in the story who are making large prime numbers, you know, much larger than we can have today, and it's playing with the idea that our knowledge of prime number, in reality, our knowledge of prime numbers is approximate, and the actual prime numbers are permanent and unassailable by human thought or action. And he kind of the book says, well, what if that isn't entirely true? What now? I don't think Greg Egan is seriously suggesting it. It's just a nice plot for a story. And how far can you go without talking absolute nonsense? And if there's anyone who can fantasize about science or mathematics without talking absolute nonsense, it's Greg Egan. I recommend him.